They say a human world dies in silence long before the first scream is ever heard. On Ardan Prime, that silence began with a tremor, a heartbeat from deep beneath the soil. No one understood what it meant. No one imagined that a tomb older than mankind itself was stirring awake. But by the time the ground split open and the green light of death spilled into the night sky, it was already too late. Yet in that moment, when hope seemed to collapse like the trembling earth beneath their feet, one small group of humans discovered that survival wasn't written by strength, but by the courage to stand, run, fight, and hold on to each other when the galaxy demanded their extinction. This is their story. Ardan Prime was a quiet mining colony, the kind of place the Imperium barely remembered but still expected tithes from. For Lieutenant Mara Hale, it wasn't paradise, but it was home. She'd grown up with the red sands, the low steel sky, and the wind that whispered through the broken canyons. She'd also grown up protecting its people, from starving miners to restless teenagers trying to escape their lives, but nothing had prepared her for the tremor that struck at 3:16 local time. It began with a vibration under her boots, as if something deep below were turning in its sleep. Lights flickered. Power conduits sparked. Vox towers collapsed. And then the screaming started. The entire eastern ridge split open like a wound in the planet's flesh. Mara reached the ridge with a small squad of exhausted PDF troopers. At first, they saw nothing but smoke pouring from the cracks. But then green light, cold, unnatural, poisonous, rose from the depths. A shape emerged. Metallic. Inhuman. A skull without life or mercy. A Necron warrior, and then another, and then hundreds. Mara froze, breath stolen from her lungs. She had seen picked logs of Necrons before, blurry images whispered about in training halls. Ancient machines. Undying. Unstoppable. But none of those images matched the terror of watching one climb out of the earth like a corpse dragging itself from a grave. Her squad fired. The air burned with lost bolts. The shots hit, and did nothing. The warriors marched forward, expressionless, unstoppable, advancing with the slow and patient confidence of beings that did not fear death, because death had no claim over them. Mara ordered a retreat, but the Necrons didn't run. They didn't chase. They simply advanced at the same steady pace, their weapons humming with emerald energy, erasing troopers in single flashes of annihilation. By sunrise, half the continent lay silent, refugees flooded the capital. Families crushed together. Children weeping. Vox units screamed emergency reports, entire settlements lost, industries erased, and worse, more tombs awakening. Mara found herself standing beside Elias Renn, a young engineer who had once studied xenotechnology before imperial law forced him to destroy his research. They had known each other since childhood, but now, in the shadow of extinction, their friendship became an anchor. "We can't fight them," Elias whispered. "You saw what they are. What they can do." "I don't need to fight them," Mara said. "I just need to keep our people alive long enough for the Imperium to hear us." But the Imperium didn't respond. Signals vanished into the void, and Elias discovered why. The Necrons weren't just killing, they were rewriting the planet, corrupting the noosphere, hijacking satellites, reshaping the world into one of their ancient dynasties. A transformation so slow and methodical it made human resistance feel pointless. Still, Mara refused to surrender. She rallied the remaining defenders and led thousands of civilians through underground emergency tunnels, moving them toward the old starport in the north, the only chance of escape left on Ardan Prime. But the Necrons were not simply awakening, they were listening, and they were coming. The march to the starport was a nightmare of collapsing tunnels, broken systems, and hungry silence. Every hour, green light seeped through cracks overhead, evidence that the Necrons were carving reality into their own image. Elias worked frantically to reroute power, open sealed doors, and bypass dead cogitators. Mara protected the rear, ready to die before letting another child be taken, but the fear wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the knowledge that the Necrons didn't feel hatred. They weren't angry. They weren't cruel, they simply were cold. Eternal. Perfectly engineered death. As the survivors reached the northern caverns, something enormous shifted in the darkness above. A massive structure, a monolith, descended through the ceiling like an obsidian pyramid carried by beams of blinding green energy. Warriors teleported from its core, forming lines of silent machines blocking every escape route. Panic erupted. Mara grabbed Elias's arm. "Tell me you have something." He swallowed hard. "I don't have a weapon, Mara, but I have a way to make them notice us." She stared. "Why in the throne would we want that?" "Because they're following a pattern. A logic loop. They think this planet is theirs. They think we are intruders. If I can disrupt that classification, even for a second, the system might pause." A pause was all they needed. A pause was everything. While Elias sprinted toward an old mining relay tower, Mara rallied the civilians into a circle, shielding them with troopers and whatever makeshift barriers they could find. The Necrons approached. Slow, steady, inevitable. Elias climbed the tower, tearing open panels, bypassing burnt circuits, connecting wires with sparks bursting against his fingers. He was drenched in sweat, hands shaking, blood dripping from cuts he barely felt. He saw the monolith turn toward him. If it fired once, he would be vaporized, but he kept working, and then, the tower lit up. A signal burst across the Necron network. Not a weapon. Not an attack. A simple message: this world is not empty. This species is not extinct. This planet is disputed. The effect was immediate. The warriors froze mid-step. The monolith paused in mid-air. For the first time since Awakening, the Necrons hesitated. Mara didn't waste the moment. She screamed for everyone to run, and they did, sprinting through the gap Elias had forced open with his improvised miracle. But the pause lasted only seconds. The Necrons recalculated, reclassified, resumed. The retreat became a race with death. The ground shook as the monolith tore through stone and metal. The starport came into view, shattered but functional, its landing fields bathed in moonlight. Mara lifted a fallen trooper's bolter and fired until the recoil tore her shoulder. Elias dragged cables across the floor, forcing power into a transport shuttle older than both of them combined. Civilians pushed, cried, stumbled, but they reached the ship. As the shuttle roared to life, Mara looked back. The Necrons were emerging from the dark, glowing eyes fixed on her, on all of them, on the future they were desperately trying to steal back. She boarded the shuttle last. The hatch closed, engines screamed, the ship rose into the air as green beams sliced the ground behind them. The Necrons watched, silent, expressionless, their world reclaimed, but their prey escaped. Ardan Prime was lost, but humanity survived, and in survival, there was hope. Mara held Elias's hand as the shuttle climbed toward the void. "Do you think anyone will believe us?" he whispered. "They will," she said softly. "Because we're going to make them. And the next world the Necrons try to take, won't be as unprepared as ours." For the first time since the Awakening, Mara smiled, tired, broken, but alive, because this wasn't the story of a world that died. It was the story of people who refused to.